First, thank you so much for coming. I've learned a lot listening to what you shared with us. My question is specifically about Iran and the nuclear weapons and the discussion that you were having with regard to Iran and the international community. I definitely understand the idea of a country obtaining a nuclear weapon or developing one themselves out of a form of protection or to be on the same, I guess, international status as other countries who are considered superpowers or on the same level as a superpower because they themselves have nuclear weapons. But what do you do when a country is openly trying to develop one or obtain one and also openly threatening to wipe out a country and claiming that a country shouldn't exist? I mean, those are two really big issues that we're dealing with, and I didn't really think you addressed that, and I was curious what you had to say.
Well, what do you do about countries that already developed nuclear weapons outside the framework of the Non-Proliferation Treaty and are daily violating resolutions of the Security Council and the International Atomic Energy Agency? I mean, that's the much more serious problem.
But that's a different situation because those countries aren't openly threatening to wipe out another country.
Nor is Iran. Just take a look at the statements. The statements are that they don't think, they said actually it goes back to Khomeini, at the time of the U.S.-Iranian alliance, the Israeli-Iranian alliance, and Israel didn't care about it then. And it keeps being repeated. The statement is that, in the course of time, Israel should no longer exist. Well, actually, I happen to agree with that too. In fact, so do a lot of people in Israel, the ones who think there should be a single democratic state. That's not calling for wiping anyone out. In fact, Iran has supported the international consensus on the two-state settlement. Actually, there are two countries that are not only calling for some nation not to exist, but are destroying it, namely the U.S. and Israel. That's their position with regard to the Palestinians. And they're not just saying it. I stress, they're not just saying it, they're doing it day by day. That's the meaning of the policies that are going on right before our eyes in Gaza and the West Bank, which we are supporting and paying for. So sure, you shouldn't call for the destruction of another nation, and you shouldn't implement that. Actually, the official position of Israel, backed by the United States, they've slightly modified it, but back about 20 years ago, their official position, the coalition government, Labor, Likud, was that there cannot be, I'm quoting it, an additional Palestinian state between Jordan and Israel. In other words, they declared, and the U.S. supported that there already is a Palestinian state, namely Jordan. I mean, the Palestinians object. They say, no, wait a minute, that's not our state. But who cares about them? We say that's your state, and there can't be an additional one. Well, that goes well beyond calling for the destruction of another country. I mean, it's analogous to saying that if somebody came along, suppose Ahmadinejad said, Jews don't need Israel because they already have New York. Okay? I mean, we'd call that a revival of Nazism. But that's the official, has been the official U.S.-Israeli position. So there's a lot to be, incidentally, about Iran. Nobody in their right mind wants Iran to have nuclear weapons, or anyone else. But it is and it's a horrible regime, undoubtedly, though there are worse ones in the region, which are our allies. Everyone, and I'm not referring to Israel, I'm referring to the other Arab states. I mean, in comparison with Saudi Arabia, Iran looks like a civil rights paradise. But but it's awful, no doubt. And there's a way to deal with it, like, for example, moving towards a nuclear weapons-free zone. But among strategic analysts, including Israeli ones, there's no real question about why Iran is moving to nuclear weapons capability, which is not the same as having nuclear weapons. It's just being at a point where you could have them, like most of the advanced industrial world is in that position. Japan, Italy, all sorts of countries. The reason is very simple. Actually, it was described by one of Israel's leading military analysts, very hawkish, Martin von Crefeld, a couple of years ago. After the invasion of Iraq, he wrote an article in which he said He doesn't know if Iran is developing nuclear weapons, and he hopes not. But he says if they're not developing nuclear weapons, they are crazy. That was his word. They're not developing them, they're crazy. The United States has just announced, we're going to attack anybody we feel like and invade you if we can do it with impunity. So you better have a deterrent. Well, maybe they're developing a deterrent. No serious analyst thinks that they would use nuclear weapons. I mean, if Iran had nuclear weapons and missiles, which nobody sane wants them to have, I mean, if they went as far as even loading a missile, the country would be vaporized, instantly, even if there was any suspicion of it. Well, the clerics may be hideous people, but they've shown no particular inclination for suicide and destruction of everything that they own and everything they value. The same is true about leaking nuclear weapons to others. If there was any suspicion that they were doing that, you can say goodbye to Iran. So chances they're using it are, probably at the level of an asteroid hitting the Earth or something like that. But it's a serious problem. In fact, if you look at the Israeli literature, they're pretty straight about it. They say that the real threat of an Iranian nuclear weapon is not against Israel, but it's against Zionism. That is, what they're afraid of is that if the region becomes too dangerous, people in Israel are just going to leave. People who have the capacity to, more educated, wealthier, and so on, because they won't want to live in a region with that threat. And in fact, emigration is a pretty serious problem. Emigration of the educated and the trained, educated sectors. So they don't want to face that threat. But I don't think any serious strategic analyst, at least I've never seen one, who thinks that there's the threat that Iran might use a nuclear weapon. I mean, it would total suicide.